Hello and welcome. My name is Sergio Tamagnini, interpreter of the Map for Future group, and I will lead the first Mapathon of Diplomacy organized by MFF. The group was founded by Valerio De Luca, a telecommunications engineer specialized in the field of geomatics, and Giuseppe Maria Battisti, a geographer of La Sapienza University of Rome that graduated in management and valorization of the territory, specialized in the field of GIS, also known as Geographic Information System. In addition, we have our colleague Silvia Rinalduzzi, a PhD architect at the University of Roma Tre, and she is here with us to illustrate the first steps of a graphic representation in digital cartography in the humanitarian field. Map for Future, an informal group of Italian cartographers, has its official headquarters within the Mille Piani co-working space, an area where we usually conduct our voluntary cartographic workshops. These are my colleagues Valerio De Luca, Giuseppe Maria Battisti, and Silvia Rinalduzzi. And today we are going to give a brief demonstration of digital cartography and how to utilize it through the realization of the digital mapping of buildings with GIS and Cadastral Survey, a local NGO that is supported by Somaliland's Ministry of Agriculture. But before we begin the cartographic drawings, I will briefly describe our website www.mapforfuture.world, where you can find information on digital cartography, GIS, and all of MFF's projects. The MFF group was founded at the beginning of January 2019, and it all began with the encounter between Valerio De Luca, Giuseppe Maria Battisti, and Michael Gartner, a representative of the group UN Volunteer Online, a well-known platform where one can voluntarily offer different digital services, such as translations, mappings, and so forth, and support the humanitarian actions carried out by the UN and UNDP. Michael proposed that we organize our first mapathon to combat female genital mutilation, a cultural tradition that is still widespread in East Africa, especially in Tanzania. From the first ever mapathon, we stopped and decided to continue with the mapping of rural villages in Tanzania. We also took the opportunity to start organizing and participating in several humanitarian mapping events. In fact, even during the event, the European Night of Geography, we were invited to participate in a program for the Department of Geography of La Sapienza University of Rome on the 15th of April 2019. During the Festival of Sustainable Development held at Fusolab in Rome, Italy, we had the opportunity to address our mapping projects for countries with serious shortcomings in the field of geographical digitized and integrated data in GIS. Countries such as the Philippines, Somalia, Somaliland, and so forth. In December 2019, we organized, in collaboration with the United Nations Cartographic Office of UNSGC in Brindisi, a mapathon at the Archeolab of La Sapienza, in which students and volunteers were taught to map, through JOSM, a Java OpenStreetMap, Somalia's road infrastructure to provide logistical support to rural populations in the Horn of Africa. The main focus of the workshop organized by Map for Future is that to map the buildings of Wajale. In fact, this small city has a very strategic location as it is situated on the border between Somalia and Ethiopia, a country which is landlocked. But before we get into the mapping of Wajale, I would like to introduce a new platform which we will be using. Another important international figure is Missing Maps. This platform also aims to help vulnerable populations to implement geographical mapping to support public authorities in land management following the logic of sustainable development. Since 2020, the Missing Maps calendar, which is visible by scrolling down to the foot end of their website, has included, amongst the Mapathon events, those of the Map for Future group, which one can register by clicking on the green button. A window will open whereby you can book a spot in the next Mapathon, and you can also find all of the useful information that volunteers need in order to participate. However, for those who do not possess a personal computer, I suggest that one downloads the application MapSwipe, which deals with the previous step before the process of digital mapping, also known as the photo interpretation of satellite images and the identification of anthropic elements in the area of interest. This is a very simple and intuitive application, but at the same time it represents an important step for the cycle of cartographic volunteering promoted by Map for Future on the web. I would like to take this time to welcome and greet our guests that have joined us online through the HOT Tasks Manager platform. On the search engine, please search for the following: Hot Tasking Manager. I would like to introduce myself to our new guests. My name is Sergio Tamagnini. I am a volunteer cartographer and interpreter of the Map for Future group, and I will demonstrate how to record and begin mappings for the buildings of the city of Wajale, Somaliland. As one of the first steps, you will need to click on the login window. A new window will appear, and it will take you to the OpenStreetMap window. A simple online registration process will take place whereby you will be required to provide a personal email. During this step, you will be prompted to confirm your email a second time in order to proceed with the insertion of a username, and finally, you will have to choose a password and confirm it a second time. Once you have entered the data and confirmed to register, a new window will appear and it will read, "Check your email's inbox for the confirmation link." At this point, open your email, and in the incoming mailbox, we shall confirm the link within the email received from OpenStreetMap. On the page OpenStreetMap, we can already start mapping individually, but our objective is to immediately participate in the task number 9349, Somaliland Wajale Buildings. Once we have reached this stage, we shall log in by entering our username and passwords that we chose before. This will allow you to change your user profile on a new window. But before we begin the mapping process, we need to enter some of our personal information. Please enter your full name and save your profile. In the Home section, we can finally click on the Start Mapping icon and look for the task Wajale in the search box at the top of the page. Once the task Map for Future Somaliland Wajale Buildings has been identified, one can study the in-depth information and descriptions of the project. Press Contribute to start mapping and follow the instructions that you will find by the colleagues at MFF. I shall now leave the floor to my colleague who shall explain how to graphically represent a building. Let me introduce you to Ms. Silvia Rinalduzzi, an architect with a PhD from the University Roma III of Rome. She will guide you through the practical section of the Mapathon, where together we shall map the settlement systems of Somaliland. We are already registered on the HOT platform. Using the code 9349, we can access the task created by MFF for the city of Wajale. If one wants, by clicking on the Read More section, you can have an in-depth look at the specifics of the project by consulting the description and coordination. On the other hand, you can click on the red button, which reads Contribute, to start mapping instantly. Here, we can find instructions that illustrate the macro objectives and the specific procedures to follow in order to complete this task. What is required to perform this task? We need to map buildings using ID Editor, which is already set by default and should not be changed. As you can see, the area of interest is divided by a grid, forming a somewhat union framework. The squares, or tiles, are numbered. The legend indicates the tiles available to be mapped in white, and those that are ready for validation shall be marked in blue. The lines that need further development will be in the yellow color, and the tiles that have been completed and validated by an expert shall be marked in green. On the other hand, the gray tiles are not available because of the cloud cover. That limits the reading of the satellite images. In red, we find the priority areas that, upon first analysis, result particularly sensitive to the study. Finally, the padlock icon indicates a blocked tile, which means it is in use by another volunteer who is mapping it at that exact moment. Now we are ready to map. So select a square from the white ones and the area will be displayed through its satellite image. The closed and pink polyline defines the perimeter within which you have to work. The background satellite image can be changed through the background tools on the right. Here we suggest you to use the Bing aerial images, which in our opinion result to be the easiest to read and interpret. Now let's start identifying the buildings and transform them into digital and searchable geometry. In the upper bar, there are 3 drawing tools: point, line, and area. For our mapping, we will use the area command. By clicking and holding on the mouse, we can define the space between the vertices of the building. Once the last point has been determined, double-click rapidly with the left mouse button to close the figure. Now we must assign an attribute to the figure, an item according to which the geometry can be identified and catalogued in. On the top left sidebar, we find the generic attribute area, proposed by the system for the polygon just drawn. With a simple click, you can edit the figure. In the search bar, type in building, and the correct item will appear for each polygon. You can continue with the tile design. However, keep in mind that each polygon must be rectified and classified as a building. Finally, the number of drawn geometries appear at the top right, where we can save our work each time or at the end of the tiles. Creating the saved file, we create a direct connection with OpenStreetMap, but we will look into this topic at a later stage. This is my colleague Valerio De Luca, co-founder of the Map for Future Group, and he will introduce you to the HOT procedure for creating your own mapping. In fact, since the beginning of September 2020, the Map for Future Group has been allowed to upload its own mapping projects on the Tasking Manager platform of the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team group. This offers the advantage of having a community of international volunteer mappers that are willing to contribute to the conclusion of this proposed mapping. Examples of projects include digitization of urban areas, public lighting design, infrastructure identification, rural land use, and land use planning. Let's see how to implement a new project on the Tasking Manager of HOT. Now, once you enter the Manage section in the Management area, we create a new mapping project with Add. Step 1 asks us to define the area affected by the mapping, and we can identify it by either interactively drawing on the map or by uploading files in a geographic format previously made on cartographic softwares such as QGIS. We are going to move over to our area of interest, which is the city of Guajale, and we're going to see several background maps that we can use to define the area that we need to go and map. So make sure to create a mapping project for the volunteers. The first map is defined as a default map in which there are symbolic representations of classic cartography, namely elements such as roads, rivers, and buildings. The basic map, defined as humanitarian, along with the classical elements, also contain other elements related to health systems such as first aid centers, health centers, hospitals, etc. The density background map, whereby population density is represented, crosses a legend consisting of a scale of colors ranging from dark brown in high-density situations of residential population to light yellow indicating a low density of residential population. Let's use the default map again for a moment, focusing on the area of the city of Guajale, and let's observe the last 2 base maps. These background maps are composed by satellite images of 2 providers, Bing and Mapbox, and they may come in handy for us to better understand the area of interest and, therefore, improve the objectives of our mapping. For a better identification of the AOI, we can choose between different background maps: symbolic representation, satellite, theme with population density, or a humanitarian theme where first aid centers, hospitals, health centers, refugee centers, and migrants are reported. You can create the area of interest by drawing it or uploading a file that was previously worked on using a cartographic data management software, such as an open source QGIS file. You can upload KML, SHP, and other file formats to the HOT platform via the upload file. In both cases, we will be notified that the size of the area of interest, also known as AOI, will be represented in square kilometers. The second step consists of designing the size of the individual polygons for the task that volunteer cartographers will be assigned. Depending on the size of the total area, we can either define very small tasks and therefore numerous or larger ones, and limited in number. A hybrid choice is also possible, and this allows us to define some very small micro areas, a choice justified by a number of elements that are to be mapped into these sub-areas. This step concerns the number of square or tiles in which to subdivide the area of the task mapped for future. It is necessary to set the optimal size of a task. As you can see in this case, they were made in 1794. So it is very important to avoid giving volunteer tasks that are too expensive to map. A very useful parameter to keep in mind is the amount of mapping operations to assign to each individual volunteer. The next step, Trim Task Grid, allows us to cut out the areas of interest in order to optimize the mapping efforts. Coastal areas are a typical example of such mapping situations. This allows us to select only the area of interest, avoiding mapping areas outside the area itself. This obviously optimizes the mapping process. The fourth step consists in giving a name to the project. In this case, Somaliland Wajale Building, because we want to map the buildings. Once the mapping project is defined, a window will pop up called Edit Project, where we can go to define some features of the project in the first section. Description, where you can define the status of the project. Publish, activated and then ready for voluntary mapping. Archived, when a project has been completed. A draft, when it's in the preliminary design phase, and it can be saved and published at a later time. Another feature is the priority to be given to the project we are creating. In the case of projects relating to environmental emergencies, such as hurricanes, earthquakes, floodings, and so on, we can assign an urgent priority. In case they concern urban planning projects, civil and environmental engineering, we can assign them to be medium or low priorities. We define the name of the project, a short description, and a more substantial one that will allow volunteers to know the background of the project. The purpose of this mapping is to collect geographic data to be inserted in the new geoportal created by the Map for Future group. In the second section, you can insert detailed instructions such as the purpose, which base map to use, and which attributes to assign to the geometries drawn by the volunteers. In this case, they are polygons, which will be used to represent the buildings. So, in this case, the tag of this mapping will be #building. Of course, for more detailed mappings, buildings can also be categorized into different classes, such as schools, hospitals, and offices. However, this step is usually carried out by the volunteers and local NGOs. In the third section, metadata can be used to define what mapping levels are required for this project. Usually, for the mapping of buildings, this can be used at the beginner level, whilst more advanced mappings, such as land cover or environmental assessment, require a more advanced level of mapping tools. In this section, you can indicate your organization. For this project, we shall use Map for Future. And you can also choose the category with which you can define these mappings. In this case, it is sustainable cities and their contributions to the new data collection of the OpenStreetMap platform. If there are priority areas, within the area that we've divided up, we can identify them and propose them as priority mapping for volunteers. In the imagery section, you can upload our link to satellite images that we previously purchased, or simply use the background maps offered free of charge by the providers. In fact, in this project, we utilized it to map the type of land cover and to give us an in-depth analysis of the change, also known as change detection. This being the case, it was very useful for us to have satellite images with specific characteristics of the highest quality containing the multispectral information that allows us to know the phenological state of the vegetation for the Ministry of Agriculture of Somaliland. We can now go ahead and define who has the ability to map. In this case, all users of the platform. Whereas, during the validation step, we are reserved the right to form a team of validators made up of members of Map for Future and the GIS and Cadastral Survey. In the settings section, that is, the settings where we can define the default language in which the project will be presented, a modification tool ID editor for adding data and adding buildings consists of a very simple tool to use for first-time volunteers. Finally, amongst the various actions that one can do, you can reset the mappings, delete the project just done, or simply clone it. In case we want to reuse the same area for the drafting of a new project, there may be some information for a more powerful customization. However, in this case, we do not need this process, and by simply clicking on Save Our Project, we will be fully updated and loaded. In fact, just write Wajale on the search window that contains all the projects of the Tasking Manager, and you will find our project Somaliland Wajale Building Map for Future. And now, my colleague Mr. Battisti will give us some background information on the city of Wajale. As you may have noticed from the maps, Wajale is a city on the border between Somaliland and Ethiopia. Located 1,524 meters above sea level, 5,000 feet, Wajale is the second largest city in the Gabile region, after the capital city, Gabile. Its black soil is very suitable for agricultural production during the rainy spring season. Its commercial market in the Horn of Africa serves all the ethnic groups in the region. It is also known as the Dry Harbor. We came to discover the infrastructural project from the commercial director of Addis Ababa Berbera, Port of Berbera, which once completed will link the Ethiopian border town of Wajale to the port of Berbera in the Gulf of Aden in northern Somaliland. Finally, in this city, a very important strategic plan is setting to unfold for both Somaliland and Ethiopia, a landlocked country. In fact, Wajale is one of the major hub cities located on the border between Somaliland and Ethiopia. It is located in a very strategic geographical position that connects the two countries. All imports destined to Ethiopia from the port of Berbera cross this strategic border city. A direct link between Addis Ababa and Berbera has already been established, along with a commercial road that will end at the port. However, we shall concentrate on the design focus of the urban plan of Wajale. Seeing as Wajale is the second endpoint of the commercial road project, this city in Somaliland is experiencing mass movements of traders and is attracting many workers. Therefore, in order to accommodate a large population, government officials have decided to produce an urban plan with the help of the GCS team to attempt to balance the demands of both landowners and developers. Most of Wajale's soil is very fertile and suitable for agriculture. So if the urban project is successful, it can provide protection for both the environment and host a large population with consideration to the needs of citizens, community, social equity and participation, public welfare, adequate expansion of the infrastructure, and services with efficient measures during emergency situations. The Wajale municipal authorities are highlighting the need for further development in GIS. The local public authorities, coordinated by the Ministry of Agriculture of Somaliland, aims to develop their geographic information systems and utilize them in urban planning, land management and development, civil and environmental engineering. All this will be possible thanks to the synergy and bond formed between the GIS and Cadastral Survey and Map for Future, which has resulted in aimed assistance in encouraging the sustainable development of this region. The aim of the Mapathon is to map the settlement system by trying to complete the census of the buildings present on the center municipal territory of Vajale. This will help us understand how the form urbi is changing and in what direction it is developing towards in terms of services for public and private areas, and the assessment of the urban environment. Subsequently, MFF has purchased the highest resolution satellite imagery from the years 2013 and 2018, thanks to a donation on behalf of the Una Quantum Inc. Association. In order to use the different images and, through the mapping of the land cover, perform the process of change detection. The objectives of the pilot project International Mapping Partnership Rome Argesia 2020 include the acquisition of satellite images of the municipal territory of the city of Vajale. This will allow for more accurate planning and improved knowledge about the urban and rural areas of this municipality. The satellite images we have purchased are Pléiades images provided by the French provider Airbus, which provides different types of satellite data. We have chosen Pléiades images because they are amongst the best images currently on the market and have a ground resolution of 50 centimeters. In addition, they contain a very important piece of information called multispectral. They are of great importance because in addition to the bands of the optical spectrum red, green, and blue, they also contain the band in the infrared field, called near-infrared. This information, combined with other bands, allows us to have information on soil quality, an assessment of the urban environment, and it allows us to use environmental indicators that are useful to understand the quality of vegetation. In conclusion, the illustrations from the Airbus provider's website contain several different types of satellite images, not just optical images, but also radar images, which allow you to verify other behaviors that happen in the soil, such as displacements, landslides, and floods. Other types of data, such as DEM, Digital Elevation Model, which are three-dimensional models, describe the elevation of the territory. Looking back at our satellite images, we can see how the Pléiades 2013 images look on video. I can't stress enough how important the donation of the Association Una Quantum Inc. was, as it allowed us to purchase these valuable satellite images. We chose this date to carry out the change detection analysis, in this case related to the change of territory. It is fundamental to analyze the current state and especially to understand how the urban and rural system of a city is evolving. In this case, we will use QGIS, an open source software, a tool for the visualization of cartographic data, such as performing a visual analysis of change between two satellite images, the first dating back to 2018 and the second one to 2013, to understand the changes in the study area. I would like to point out that this type of image is called pan-sharpening. Pan-sharpening means that following the purchase of satellite images, we are given a mix of different products and they can be combined as raw and semi-raw products. We preferred to choose semi-raw products to extract more information through the union of the multispectral part of the satellite images with the panchromatic part. In doing so, on the other hand, we obtain information on the state of the soil, water, the climatic and urbanized environment. On the other hand, we obtain a high detail, a peculiar characteristic, of the band panchromatic, with which we obtain the resolution of 50 centimeters on the ground. By merging these two informations, you get a satellite image of great resolution with a lot of information for the study of the area of interest. To give an example of what you can see through the multispectral information, we calculated the Normalized Difference Vegetation Index, also known as NDVI, an index used for assessing the phenological state of vegetation, which calculates the quality of vegetation present in the study area. When the NDVI is compared with the optical satellite image, we notice that the areas represented by the color dark red go to identify water basins, whilst the warm colors in this symbolic classification, with the colors represented as light red, go to identify all urbanized areas. The colors that change between yellow or green indicate the presence of either bare soil or poor or abundant vegetation when the color is dark green. This assessment must take into account the latitude of the study area. We are operating in a subtropical context like that of East Africa, where Somaliland is located. The importance of obtaining high-quality satellite images and the geographical information they contain becomes even more evident when it comes to urban and rural planning or sustainable development. We now return to find Dr. Silvia Rinalduzzi, who at this point will complete the mapping of the buildings present within the previously selected task. When we are approaching the completion of the graphic design of all the buildings present within the study area, we can appropriately verify the item building has been correctly attributed to all the polygons drawn and that these are graphically represented by the red color. At this point, to complete the task, just click on Upload, and if you're not 100% sure, check on the window with the item beside "I would like someone to check this drawing." Now you can upload all of your geographical data to OSM and wait for your task to be validated by a member of the Map for Future group. In case you notice a total absence of buildings and therefore no polygon has been traced, you need to answer the question, is this task completely mapped? Yes, and write in the comments administrative technicians and/or local and international authorities on the value of digitized geographical data display. 2. To draw up an open-source digital container of Inform Actions, that is, of information for the concretization of humanitarian actions. And 3. To develop a cycle of seminars and laboratories of digital cartography in order to favor the knowledge of the territory. These are the 3 fundamental principles of the Map for Future group. The Mapathon, whose main objective is to help people living in the most disadvantaged areas and/or those affected by natural disasters through the digital mapping of useful geographical information, is just one of the activities of the Map for Future group. In fact, we are establishing a network of cooperation with local and international NGOs. After a year of activity in the province of Rome, the collaboration with the network of volunteers, Roma Altruista, also known as RA, can be considered consolidated and confirmed by the high participation of volunteers who have joined the voluntary cartographic workshops supporting the group Map for Future. Consultancies and mediations are also given out by Andrea Magnini, founder of the Forum UN Italia, former director of the UN, with various leadership positions in the Agency for Cooperation and Development, such as UNDP, the United Nations Development Programme, and in peacekeeping operations from 1982 to 2012, and UN consultant from 2013 to 2019, by orientating and developing activities for the Map for Future group in order for them to enter the sector of international development cooperation and the preparation and management of international projects. The NGO GIS and Cadastral Survey is an office of GIS technicians operating under the patronage of the Ministry of Agriculture of Somaliland. The group formed during the Cadastral Survey, addressing territorial disputes in Somaliland, was a peacemaking project funded by Denmark and the UNDP and which was successfully completed in March 2004. And now we would like to leave you with a short video of the GCS team who wanted to say hello and thank all of the volunteers.
Hi, my name is Abdullah Abdi. I am GIS technician at GCS. My main duties are designing digital maps and with geographical data and other data sources, and converting physical maps into digital form for computer usage. Thank you for giving me this wonderful opportunity to introduce you myself.
Hello everyone, my name is Khalid Qadmi. I am the GIS expert at GCS. I would like to take the opportunity to thank everyone who's volunteering in the Mapathon. I hope your support will be fruitful and contribute to the community of Wajale. Thank you for the opportunity.
Hi, my name is Fatima and I am a GIS assistant from GCS. My main duties are planning, directing, coordinating, and maintaining the Geographic Information System program. I believe Women on GIS is a crucial I would like to also thank you for giving us the chance to introduce our background to you guys, and thank you so much.
They care a lot about this collaboration using the GIS projects, and they wanted to record these videos to show their interest and gratitude for the activities that every single cartographic volunteer carries out during the mapathons organized by Map for Future. So in summary, the main focus of the workshops organized by Map for Future is to map the buildings of Wajale. In fact, this small city has a very strategic location as it is situated on the border between Somalia and Ethiopia. In this area, we can foresee a very important trade route between the Ethiopian capital of Addis Ababa and the port of Berbera, where the trade route begins from Wajale and ends on the northern coast of Somalia, the Gulf of Aden. It is for this reason that it is important to know the consistency of the settlement system of Wajale in order to provide a guideline for the urban planification for public authorities of the city where big development
Perché